everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I just finished watching episode 11 of Andor, the penultimate episode of this whole first season, and this is definitely, this is a ramp up to the big, whatever the epic finale is going to be. I don't know if it's going to necessarily be action-oriented, or it's going to be, just a big turn of events as far as, the life of Andor and the rebellion and everything, but this definitely felt like a better ramp up than kind of what we've seen previously, because instead of, it felt like, how we've had 2 episodes leading up to one epic third finale of each of these arcs that we've seen so far. It felt like you take those 2 episodes and you just make it 1 episode, and it just, I don't know, it feels better. That's what I would have done if I were to make one change of this show. Instead of having 2 episodes of build up and then 1 epic third act, I would have just had 1 episode of build up and then another act. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's what this felt like, because we only have 1 episode after this. So yeah, they're building up to something pretty epic here. So basically, this show has culminated into 2 events that are going to happen. Probably both happen next episode simultaneously, I imagine. And it's kind of interesting how they're interwoven in this really indirect sort of way. First, unfortunately, Minerva has died. Andor's mother, she was sick a couple episodes ago, and we open up and she's gone. And I gotta tell you, oh man, when the droid is sitting there and he's just staring at where she normally sits, and he's just charging, and he's in his charging port, and he's just looking at her empty chair there, I was it's too early in the morning, and I'm getting a little watery-eyed because he says something along, his friend, Andor's friend, says all right, come on, B, we gotta go do this, and he's I don't want to go, I want Merva, and I was oh god. Oh man, the droids are making me kind of tear up a little bit. Ooh. Anyways, so yeah, just Merva has died, and they talk about how on Ferrix they have this whole tradition where they kind of take your ashes and they mix it with the stone, and then they find a wall for you to go to, so you literally become a part of Ferrix. So you can imagine, if they've been doing this for thousands of years, how many structures around here are just made of your ancestors, right? Literally the bricks are made of the dead, which is an interesting idea there. And basically, because they're going to have this whole funeral, and Dedra from the ISB makes sure no, let them have a funeral, because we want to watch it. We want to see who's there. We want to see if if Andor shows up, because everyone's still looking for Andor. And they even remind us oh, that's right, we still have what's her name, Sintra, we still have the people that Luthen had sent to go kill Andor, because Andor knows too much. He's a loose end, right? Which, again, that's the one thing that look, Luthen's a shady guy. He's obviously operating in a lot of those gray areas. He had that whole speech about how he has to be this, this heartless kind of guy, right? But the fact that he has these people waiting, they've been waiting for who knows how long, just hanging out on Ferrix. She has a job as a bartender waiting for Andor to show up so she can kill him, right? So we just have both the ISB and Luthen's crew waiting for Andor to show up, and both of them will capture or kill him. So not looking so great for Andor. Meanwhile, Andor, of course, is he's hanging out with Michi. Is it Michi? Basically, they have escaped together. They even kind of question, how many of us do you think got out? What if it's just us 2? So they're not even sure. That was a question a lot of people had, where did everyone else swim off to? They probably went to different shores around the planet. Who knows exactly what happened to them? We'll probably never find out exactly how many of them survived. But basically, they go their separate ways, saying okay, well, someone has to know the atrocities that are going on in this prison system that the Empire has, and whatever else is happening there, whatever they're building, right? So they agree to split up. That way they have an increased chance of at least one of them getting out into the larger world and telling somebody who can do something, so that's a thing. And then, of course, Andor calls home. And he's look, no names, gotta be real quiet and secret. And he's tell my mom that she would be proud of me, and I'm coming home, and this and that. And so of course the operator has to be like, oh, sorry, your mom's gone. And it's just this really heartbreaking scene. Again, we don't spend a whole lot of time with Minerva in this show, but like they really get across how much Andor and Minerva, like, it's this adopted son and this mom, and you feel the love that's there, right? Like, especially like their last conversation where Andor has to leave and he wants her to go with him, and he's like, I'm gonna worry about you all the time, and she's just like, that's called love, like it's and she's gone. It feels so sudden that she's gone, because it happens off screen and it happens in between episodes, and it's like, oh god, so man, that's heartbreaking. Between Andor and the droid reacting to this, it's like, ugh. Anyways, so basically what we're leading off to is that, like, is Andor gonna, he's probably gonna go to the funeral not knowing that he has two groups of people waiting for him there. Meanwhile, the other major event that this is all kind of leading up to, that I imagine are happening simultaneously, you of course have I think it's Anton Krieger. That's the name of, it's this other rebel group that we have not actually seen. I think we saw like a hollow image of him, but we've never actually seen this guy before, but basically they captured one of his pilots and they gained information about this job. They're trying to attack one of the power stations, the Imperial power stations, and the ISB knows this, so of course they're going to be waiting. And Luthen's whole conflict last episode was like, yeah, we're going to let, first of all, he lies. I believe it was 50 people they talked about last episode. They're like, oh, there's 50 men, and I'm just gonna let them get captured by the ISB, because I have a person in the ISB feeding me information, and if suddenly some of this information like is out and gets reacted to by this rebel group, the ISB is going to start thinking, oh, we have a mole. We have, we can't trust any piece of information because someone is leaking things. And Luthen doesn't want them to be that cautious, so he's going to just let it happen. And this episode, he reiterates all this to Saw Gerrera, except he changes it to 30 men. So I believe it went from 50 to 30. So already, even to Saw Gerrera, he's softening this, and it's like, oh my god. And kind of like, I believe I even said this last episode, but yeah, Luthen and Saw Gerrera, their methods and their ways of going about things are so in tune. I was like, yeah, they'd probably be best buds. And of course, what happens this episode, Saw Gerrera's being his usual paranoid self, and Luthen kind of uses that to his advantage, and he basically manages to convince Saw Gerrera that, like, yeah, it's only 30 men, just let them get captured, and then, hey, look, if I was, I'm not a bad guy, because otherwise I would have just let you, work with them just now, because Saw Gerrera was, like, fully ready to do this job as well. He's like, if I was ISB, I would let you go with them. So look, me and you, we're going to play the long game, let them get captured, let that happen, let them get killed, whatever. But I have an in with the ISB, we can do something larger in the long run. And, Saw Gerrera's like, oh, for the greater good. And Luthen's like, yeah, whatever you want to call it. And we saw this line in the trailer, but it feels like it's such a more prominent thing now that we have the full context of what's happening. And then Saw Gerrera's like, let's call it war, And basically that's the ultimate justification, right? It's like, because they operate in such a gray area that it's like, yeah, we can sacrifice 30, that's secretly 50 men, for the greater good, for our war, for the cause, which of course is Saw Gerrera's whole thing. It's like, yeah, doesn't matter how many people we have to sacrifice, how many normal citizens are put in danger's way, we got to attack the Empire. This is all about the long run kind of thing, so it's very much an extremist kind of view of this whole situation. It's like take the rebellion, but in the most dark kind of way. And that's, Luthen and Saw, they're two peas in a pod right now. Like, of course Luthen's still not telling Saw everything, but they're very much two people I feel like could go along with a lot of plans together. Anyways, so Luthen has a conversation that, look, they're obviously talking somewhat coded, and he's talking to his what is her name? The girl who runs his shop, the one who, like, is helping him like manage all his little schemes, right? He's talking to her, and he has this whole conversation about like, oh well, I made the sale, because they're talking as if they're selling artifacts. Like, oh, I made the sale. It was a little bit harder than I thought it would have to be, and I'm kind of interested in this other piece. And they have like an argument a little bit about, and she's like, oh, don't worry about that other piece, that would be too dangerous. So I'm assuming they're talking about Andor, and he wants to go back to Ferrix, and she's like, we have enough people there on the ground, we already sent people to go kill Andor, and the ISB has people looking for Andor. Everyone's just like paying attention to this funeral. It would be really complicated if you decided to go there. And it, at the very least, it looked like Luthen was on his way to Ferrix. And he ends up getting captured because, they have like this whole communications array, Star Destroyer type thing sitting out there, what the Empire does. And so they stop Luthen there. And of course Luthen's like, oh, I'm just some trading freighter from Alderaan, just minding my own business. And of course they're not buying that, so they got the tractor beam and they're ready to pull him in, and he can't let himself get captured because then they'll have his face and they'll find out who he is, and like the whole idea, his whole thing is blown, right? So he manages to escape, actually. In fact, he does this really cool thing where like they have the big tractor beam dish like pointed at him, and in the back of his ship he like applies his thrusters, and then he releases like a bunch of spikes out of the back of his ship, and then they send out some TIE fighters, and he activates, like we've seen in the trailer, like those lasers that just go off the side of his ship, which, by the way, he's getting all this weaponry. I'm like, where's all this been? This is like the kind of technology that like these weapons, no other rebels have this. This is like some crazy stuff. I don't know how much he paid for this, but anyways, he manages to escape. So where's Luthen going next? His ship is probably at least identified, so he probably needs to get a new ship if he wants to go anywhere now. So who knows what that's going to lead into, because he didn't get captured, but they definitely know what his ship looks like. And of course that he escaped so violently, they're probably like, okay, so that was definitely a rebel, right? Like, so they're easily identified now. And yeah, so basically we have everything happening with the Krieger group and ISB and Saga, and everyone just saying like, let that happen. So we're gonna see what actually ends up happening there, and that's probably gonna happen at the exact same time that Minerva's funeral is happening. And I have to imagine Cassian is gonna end up going there, and obviously he's gonna try and be all undercover and stuff, because he's probably aware that people would be looking for him, right? He has to be. Of course, the big irony of all of this is that the Empire's looking for him. He just escaped from an Imperial prison. He was already captured, and they don't even know that. And so that's kind of like the big joke about this whole thing. And yeah, as far as like Luthen's crew trying to kill Andor, are they really gonna go through with it? Are they actually gonna like kill this guy who helped them on their mission just so Luthen's name doesn't get said or his face doesn't get described? It's like, what Luthen has a lot of pull with these people, and they're willing to sacrifice, like between these people and the undercover guy at the ISB, like everyone's so willing to sacrifice things for Luthen just because Luthen says this is like the way it has to be. It's like, what exactly does Luthen have on them? Because like I understand fighting against the Empire and believing in the cause and all that, but the way Luthen does things, it's like, are none of these people ever going to speak up and be like, I don't think it should or maybe they're scared that Luthen would just have them killed too if they start like trying to rebel a different way, or if they join a different group and they know what he looks like, and Luthen be like, well, I have to kill them, they know what I look like. Maybe that's the big thing that he has over their head. I don't know. But anyways, we also see a little bit of Mon Mothma about how like basically her daughter, turns out the reason that she dresses the way she does with her braids and everything, it's because that is some part of very traditional Chandrila ceremonial thing. We see her and a bunch of her friends all have the same haircut, the same like hairstyle going on with the braids. So it's definitely some kind of traditional thing that they have going on, semi-religious ceremony type stuff. And basically her cousin, Vel, Mon Mothma and Vel have this conversation about like, really, you're letting her do this? And Mon Mothma's like, it was her idea. It wasn't even Perrin's. So surprisingly, Perrin is like more open-minded than this, but like it's all her. She wanted she wanted to be all traditional like this, which I guess that happens, right? Like if you have parents who are not very traditional, the kids might be more traditional because they always want to like rebel and do the opposite of what the parents are doing, right? So even if like the parents are making sense and getting away from these customs, the kids are like, well, I'm gonna rebel and I'm gonna do the customs now. That's just kind of how teenagers are, I guess. And of course, we kind of go into this whole thing about how like, Mon Mothma was getting money out without anyone noticing anything, and then Aldhani happened and suddenly she can't get money out anymore, which kind of leads you to question. I'm like, well, was this part of Luthen's plan? Like, well, did Luthen know that they were gonna tighten their grip so much that Mon Mothma can't get any money out? And for this whole time we thought it was because we want everyone to kind of realize how bad the Empire is, and that's why he kind of poked them with the stick with the Aldhani thing, right? But now it's like, was he trying to somehow mess with Mon Mothma also by making her job more difficult? I don't know. Is there some, because it feels like Luthen always has like these long games happening, like these layered like plans that are all happening for different reasons. So was he trying to mess with Mon Mothma and make it more difficult for her to move money around? Was that part of his motivation? I don't know. But yeah, basically she's definitely considering marrying her daughter off to that one guy's son in order to make money easier to move around, which I guess you could say like, well, the daughter's already like kind of entrenched in these more traditional Chandrilan ways, so she might even be more for that, because she's already there, really. She doesn't have to be like convinced to be part of this traditional ceremony because she's doing weird Chandrilan cult stuff with her friends over there at the table. So I don't know. Anyways, I really enjoyed this episode. A lot of stuff is happening, a lot of pieces are moving, and obviously we're getting a season 2. My only thing is I feel like a lot of what's being set up now is actually going to be resolved next episode, because remember, season 2 is going to start off 1 year later. So they can't really like set up some like, oh, this thing's happening soon, and then it be 1 year later, because they're going to do like 4 years before Yavin and then 3 years before Yavin. So season 2 is going to be much more of like a time jumping season. So everything that's happening now is going to be resolved next episode, is my point. But yeah, I'm really excited. This is all leading somewhere. Is Luthen actually gonna end up getting caught this season? Because it feels like Luthen's gonna be a thing for the whole show, but maybe not. Maybe Luthen like kind of gets, and that's the thing, is he's not. Obviously, he's doing a lot of good for like the rebellion in the long run, but I don't know. He's such a shady character, right? Like he's not like this, more neutral good or pure good that Mon Mothma is, because Mon Mothma would never sacrifice a whole crew of people just because like, but we got someone undercover. It's like, no, she would send someone to go save them, So I don't know. Very interesting stuff happening here. We'll find out how it all happens, like is he really, like, are him and Saw really just gonna let those people die? I mean, we've never met them on screen, so it does feel like it's easier to be like, off screen, yeah, they all got captured and they all died, and now Luthen's plan worked out fine. Or is something going to go horribly wrong in a different kind of way during that whole not heist, but the whole power plant sabotage mission from those other rebels? Something else happens where one of them does know Luthen, or one of them does know Saw Gerrera, because Luthen's convinced that like, oh yeah, I was in the same room with that guy, but they don't really know me. They can't if they get captured, they don't know my face. Not like you Saw. Like, I can't do this to you, Saw Gerrera, because you know who I am. You know my name. You know, so if you were to ever get captured, that would be really bad for me. So, you know, that's how you know you can trust me. You know, that's basically how he convinces Saw, right? So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm pretty excited. There is a little bit of trailer footage. A little bit of trailer footage that we have not seen yet. And I think it's just a small glimpse of the people of Ferrix rising up against some stormtroopers. That's what it looks like in the trailer. So, yeah, I guess we're gonna see what happens during this funeral. It should be a pretty tense situation, because everyone's there looking for Andor, and he's gonna show up, right? It's his mom. He's absolutely gonna show up. Plus, no one has really warned him to not show up. So, you know, we'll see what ends up happening. All right, let me know what you guys think about Andor episode 11, and I'll see you guys next time.